All right, so now let's take a look at some of the grammar points that probably you probably feel it quite difficult for you. So we are going to take a close look at some of the important grammar points that you should know as a high school student. So for the very first question, probably some people have some problems or probably find it quite difficult to think about which tense you should use. And basically, as you know, for a junior high school student, probably you know the tense of present tense and also past tense and also present perfect tense. So there should be something from chapter 2, which is about tenses. For example, probably you know the sentence like, I go there, right? So there will be something happened right now. So there will be the present tense, right? So that is the very first one. And probably another one be I went there. And there will be something about the past. So something happened before. And that will be the past tense, as we mentioned before. And you can also say I have been there. And for this one, there'll be something from the past from past to now. I'll just maybe like abbreviation at past and then till now. All right. So we call this kind of tense will be like present perfect. And here we are going to talk about another one, which is I had been there. And for this one, we call this one be something before the past tense. So probably will be something happened. Something happened earlier than the past. And then we call this one like past perfect. Okay, so if something happened earlier than the past, then we call this one like past perfect. Okay, something happened earlier than the past. Then in this case, we'll use the past perfect, this kind of tense, all right? So for example, in this movie, Xinjiang still went to the movie with us, although he had watched the same film twice. So the answer should be he had watched the same film or he has seen the same film twice. So that's why here in this case we use he had seen the same film twice because it's something that already happened before the time we have here. Okay, so in this case, because we know Xinjiang, he has seen a movie before, so he still went to the movie with us again. So in this case, we want to say something happened earlier than the past tense. We use past perfect tense, like this one that we have seen. So we know for this one, the one here in purple will be something that happened earlier than the one here in yellow. All right, so if you want to say something that happened kind of earlier than the other one, then we'll use this kind of past perfect tense. All right. And as you know, the rule for this one will be had and then PP, as you know. So that will be the one for this, all right? Then we'll move on to another question, which is about this one. So for this one, the answer will be had hidden. And we also have other choices like hides, hid, and was hidden or had hidden. But basically, you can pay attention to this part. There will be was caught. So in this case, it should be something like for the past tense, right? Was caught. So obviously, for the blank here, we will choose something like a past tense. So something that happened before. So in this case, we choose the one had hidden himself. So as we know, before he was caught by his mom. So again, this is the tense we're going to talk about, something that happened earlier, the past tense. So if something happened then earlier than the past tense, then we, in this case, we'll use the past perfect. Or just like this one, I had been there. Then we'll use something that happened earlier than the past tense, then we use past perfect. So in this case, before he was caught by his mom, we know Xinjiang, he had hidden himself in Shiloh's doghouse. If you watch the animation, probably know these characters in the cartoon anyway. So I had been there. So this kind of past perfect will be used to talk about the time that happened earlier than the past tense. So as we know, the one here in purple happened earlier than the one in yellow. So that's why here still we use had hidden himself, right? And there's another thing you probably should know for the verb we are using here. So you hide yourself. So usually it's a hide. As a verb would be hide, hid. And then hidden. That's the verb. And you can hide yourself or hide in this case he had hidden himself. So two things you have to pay attention to will be the first one, you have to use the past perfect because this is something that happened earlier than the one here in yellow. And another one will be the verb will be hide, hid, and hidden. So which means you try to kind of cover yourself, you try to make yourself kind of disappear or gone or just in order not to let other people find where you are. Okay. So there'll be the word hide, right? Then let's move on to another question probably you'll have. This one, I think a lot of people make a mistake, right? Yeah, quite many of you. Anyway, so for this time, because for this question, we have a key point here, at this time. So in other words, we are trying to focus the time, especially as the moment, at that kind of time point, all right? So you can think about, probably you will say, I was playing basketball at this time. I was playing volleyball at the moment. So when you use the time like this one, at this time or at the moment, then probably you'll use the tense like this one. At this moment, I am trying to figure out what happened a few minutes ago. All right. So at this moment, I'm trying to figure out what happened a few minutes ago. So at this moment, so within a very short time period or within a very short time, we are trying to say we are doing something at the moment. So in this case, usually we'll use the one like this one. Right? I'm trying to figure out what happened a few minutes ago, because we are doing that at that moment. We are doing that at the time, all right? So in this case, at this time, he, a teacher training program in Brisbane, living in Australia for a while, all right? So in this case, you also have to use something like this one. I am attending, or he is attending. So probably originally you're thinking about he is attending a teacher training program in Brisbane, living in Australia for a while. But another key point I have to pay attention to will be, because we're talking about 2 years ago. So in this case, we should use a past tense. So that's why we made this one into was attending. It was attending a teacher training program over there. Then we'll move on to the next one. All right, so this one, I think also quite a lot of people make the mistake for this one. Here we're talking about certain kind of things about the, I think it will be something about the auxiliary verbs. So if you sorry. So if you forget this one, probably you can go to chapter 4 to take a close look at some of the usage or at some of the uses of the auxiliary verbs. And it should be certain kind of page, on page 45. Okay, on page 45, if you have the materials online with you. So this is the only word like may what? So if you want to make a request, or you want to ask someone for help, or you want to ask someone to do something, and there's a sentence pattern which will be like, may someone do something? Or you can say like, may we go, or might we go now, for example. So usually we use this one, may, to present a certain kind of request or something we want to, we want to ask someone to do something for that. So in this case, because I think in this case, if you know the cartoon, action, comment, shouted, may we have peace on earth, which means he's trying to say probably we can making a request or kind of make a certain wish that we will have peace on earth. So that's why in this case we'll use the word may. And also has some other choices, like a lot of people choose which one. Let's take a look. Must. A lot of people would choose like can, must, and shall. Like a lot of people probably would choose the one like can, must, or shall. Okay. And in this one, if we use the word like can, in this case, we are not trying to make a wish or make a request. We're asking whether we can do it or not. In this case, will be, can we have peace on earth? And probably there will be a question mark. And in this one is not going to have a question mark. That's because this one will be like a request. You try to ask someone to do something. So this is not a question. You just want to have this kind of thing to happen. So that's why we don't need a question mark here. It's just like we try to make a wish and we try to tell our hope. Then you say, may we have peace on earth, right? So this one will be the one that is quite special at this point, right? So that's will be the things that we try to make a request or want to ask someone to do something, or we think something, or we ask something to happen. And in this case, we'll use the word may. Okay, may. There will be something that you want to make a wish, you want to kind of tell your will about something, right? And for the other three, probably because the first one, can we have peace on earth, there will be something like a question. So there should be a question mark. And also another one, you're also asking like, must we have peace on earth? Okay, in this case, also you put a question mark. And shall we have peace on earth? In this case, we also will use the question mark as well. But may we have peace on earth? So just like we just shout and we make our wish, just like we want to make a request and we ask something to happen in this case. So this not going to be a question. There will be a statement that we hope that will happen, right? So there will be for this one. Then let's move on to this one. For question number 10, also this one has something to do with the perfect tense as well. Because as you can see, he could not Thailand last week. I saw him buying his dinner at the restaurant. So which means he's still here in Taiwan. So that's why he could not. So for this kind of auxiliary verbs, could, right? You can put have and then PP. Right? Because if you just use the word like could, and then the root verb, in this case, we don't know whether you're talking about something that happened kind of in the past or right now. So usually for this kind of case, if you see these kind of auxiliary verbs, could, you can put a perfect tense behind to say something that happened before. So in this case, like he could not have, the answer should be, he could not have traveled to Thailand last week. Right, so there will be something because I saw him buying dinner at this restaurant, so that will be impossible for him to travel at the moment. So in this case, there'll be have traveled because we use the tense here to show something that happened in the past. Put these two together. Then there's another one. Would you mind? Okay, would you mind that? Would you mind something? So I think you learn these kind of verbs in your junior high school a lot, quite. Also, like for example, there'll be some verb like you have to put a noun behind, like practice something, or you try to enjoy something, or you try to mind something. So there are some of these kind of verbs that you have to put a noun behind. So that's why in this case, you have to make it into a being form here, okay? So in this one, it would be, would you mind? So mind here is used as a verb, which means, do you care, all right? Or would you care? So that's why in this case, we'll put the answer, would you mind uploading your photo on our class Padlet? Right? And also there's another verb like this. So our school boasts one of the top schools in central Taiwan. So our school boasts something as well. So that's why here in this case, we will boast something. And in this case, we had to put a verb here. But as we know, you can say our school is called or is named one of the top schools. So it should be a passive voice. So originally they would say our school is called one of the top school. Right? So here we should use a passive voice, okay? So it should be a passive voice. So our school is called one of the top schools, right? So in this case, boast something, right? So we boast something, which means that something that make you feel quite proud, and then you probably feel quite satisfied with that. So our school boasts, and then here it should be a noun. So that's why we had to make this part into like a VIG form, like the one we have here. So in this case, you'll say our school boasts being called one of the top school here. So that's why I have like being called in this case. Okay, and we have the last two one. So this time, by next year, hopefully, all the people in Taiwan will what? And the answer we have for this one will be, will have be fascinated. So by the next year, hopefully, all the people. So if you want to say next year, all the people in Taiwan will be fascinated, right? Then this is why, because next year. And then will be fascinated. Okay, we use a future tense here. But here we use the word by next year. So which means we are talking about something that should be done before the time point of the next year. So as we mentioned before, after the auxiliary verbs, probably you will use have, PP, use this kind of perfect tense to talk about that something should be happen. There's something that should happen already. And that's why we'll use this kind of will have, this kind of tense. Otherwise, if you just use like will and then verb, you cannot show the difference of the time. And by next year, so they'll be before the time. So that's why we use this kind of have perfect FPP to tell something that should happen already. All right, it's quite the same rule like the past perfect. We use had PP to say something that already happened before, and we use this one will have PP to tell something that happened a little bit earlier than the future tense. So that's why we will have the one here. Right? So that's why in this case, we make this one into like will have been fascinated. On this one. Right? Then we'll move on to the very last one, which is the outbreak of COVID-19. So the very first key point you have to know about this one, this part will be the subject. And this part will be a singular verb. So in other words, you have to put a verb that with an S ending, right? So in this case, we are not going to choose the one like some people choose like have and this one or are. These two verbs will not be right because this part will be a singular verb. So it's impossible for you to choose have or like are. Okay, these two will be the incorrect one because this one is a singular noun. So you should use the word like has. Because outbreak, this is just one thing, right? So that's why you use has or is here behind the verb. So that's why with the answer will be the outbreak of COVID-19 is serious. So probably can try to make this one sure. There'll be something like the outbreak is still serious, right? Or another one, the outbreak has killed more than 4 million people. So I can also try to make this one short. So the outbreak has killed many people, all right? So the outbreak, this is a singular noun, so use this kind of verb here. So there'll be is, and then has killed. All right. So probably these are all the questions probably you will have for the grammar test we had this time. All right. So if you have no more question, probably you can stop here and see you around next Monday. Bye.